Hello and welcome to episode 94 of the Accountant Success Secrets podcast. Each week we talk with an accountant whose journey we hope will inspire others in practice. I'm one of your co-hosts, Mark Lee, mentor, speaker and debunker for accountants and founder of the Soul Practice Club.
And I'm Philippa Haynes, brand strategist for accountants and bookkeepers, helping you to stand out, importantly, for all the right reasons.
Our interviewees all have different backgrounds, different reasons for setting up their practice, different experiences along the way, and different ambitions.
So we're here to explore their personal stories, starting with why and how they started the firm, the highs, the lows, and the lessons they have learned.
Our aim is to identify what makes them tick and to highlight useful insights and secrets that you can apply straight away.
Yeah, and if you would like to share your story, and we hope you will, in a future episode, please get in touch with us.
Yeah. Now, today our guest is Tej Gewara, an AAT and CIMA qualified accountant who's been the owner of the TaxAssist Accountants franchise for Leicester East since 2011, so coming up 15 years. The main office is close to Humberstone Park in Leicester, with another in Nottingham that he bought out about 18 months ago. He's a big Liverpool fan and a family man.
Welcome, Tej. Would there be anything that you'd like to add or clarify to that introduction?
No, that's pretty accurate. So no, let's go with that.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Okay. Before we go any further, we need to thank our sponsor of the podcast, Pinnacle Global Group, the trusted offshoring partner to over 150 accounting and bookkeeping firms across the UK and Ireland, led by London-based chartered accountant Mayank Pandya. With offices in London and Mumbai and a team of over 300 professionals, Pinnacle provides both compliance resourcing from accountants, bookkeepers and payroll admins to tax and audit associates. And of course, the value-added staff, management accountants, virtual financial controllers, financial analysts and more. And they're of course GDPR compliant, ISO certified, covered by professional indemnity insurance and offer flexible models, full-time, part-time or pay as you go. You can even start with a trial period to join their sponsored trip to Mumbai to meet the rest of the team in person. So to find out more, please go to www.pinnacleoss.co.uk or click wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Also supporting the podcast is the Tax Advice Network. Their website enables accountants to choose specific specialist tax advisors for general tax support or for help across any of over 100 specific areas of tax. It's free to use. You just pay the tax advisor that you choose after agreeing terms with them, whether for ad hoc advice or a regular tax clinic type support service for your practice. Go take a look at their website, findataxadvisor.online, where you can also register to get their weekly tax tips, which are written especially for general practitioner accountants.
Yeah, and finally, before we start the interview, a reminder, you can also support the podcast and get exclusive bonus content by subscribing on Patreon.
And Philip and I are delighted to see an increasing number of listeners who are downloading the Patreon app, subscribing and getting those bonus episodes, which will come through your usual podcast player. The details are in the show notes if you need more information.
Right, let's get back to Tej. As you know, we aim to keep the podcast to around 30 minutes, and we do that by focusing on a few key questions. Over to you, Mark.
Okay, so Tej, tell us your background and what led you to starting the practice or joining TaxAssist 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's actually 15 years ago this month that I joined. Yeah, and as I said, my background was CIMA and AAT, so I used to work in industry, and always had the thing about wanting to run my own business one day, and I thought having an accountancy background gives you a good grounding in business, and being able to kind of run a business, knowing the finance side of things, it'll be a good sort of grounding for me. At that time, I thought I want to do something different. I don't want to do an accountancy at all. I want to do something different, but just use those skills. And I looked at kind of franchising, and I looked at various other kind of models and businesses. And TaxAssist at the time, I'd kind of kept an eye on them in the background and read about them. And then about 15 years ago, I was kind of between jobs, and I started kind of looking at this sort of stuff again. And they had an open day, discovery days as they call them. So I thought, well, I'll just go along. I'll see what it's like. I've got time to kind of do it. So I went along, and I kind of liked what they said. They talked about working on the business rather in the business, and about creating an asset. I think at that time they'd just won like franchise of the year or something at that time. So I thought, well, that can't be bad. And then I got kind of thinking, well, if the worst should happen, then I can just go back to being an accountant. At least it's something I know. And I spoke to some of the other franchisees. They give you the list of people that you can go and talk to. And then I thought, okay, this sounds good. I think I want to do this. But at the same time, you're kind of cautious. Being an accountant, you're kind of, your mindset is kind of fairly cautious, and you don't want to take too many risks. And at that time, I was still applying for jobs, and I actually got through to the second round, or the final round of interviews at a firm in Leicester. And I thought, well, if I get this job, I'll give it a year, and I'll probably revisit it in a year's time. The night before the interviews, the final interviews, I got a call late in the night just saying all interviews have been pulled. They haven't been given a reason, but they've all been cancelled.
Wow.
And so I thought, well, that's a sign then perhaps, I've been told to kind of take this opportunity. So then I decided to kind of go for it. I turned 40 at the time. So I thought, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. My father has passed away, and he left a bit of money. It wasn't a lot, would have paid for a new kitchen. That's what my wife wanted. But I just thought this is kind of symbolic. I can do something with this money, and kind of fate is telling me to do this. So I thought, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. So decided to kind of go into it. Really.
I love that, Tej, and it sadly reminds me that I did something similar shortly after my mother passed away, and invested in a business. And I then sadly had to sue the founders to get my money back when they screwed me over. It was very different situation, very different scenario. But I think it's important to clarify that, because taking on a franchise does involve a capital commitment. Although I'm sure TaxAssist, like many other franchises, can arrange the financing for you so that you can buy in and all that sort of stuff. In a position we didn't need to do that. At what point did you have that feeling that, because I know a number of people who start an accountancy practice within a franchise, many stay, some leave, different franchises, obviously. But one of the attractions was this one for you, is that, I can leverage the brand, so I don't have to spend a lot of time and effort going out to win clients. We'll win clients even if I don't do a lot of that. Was that an attraction, or it didn't happen like that? What was your approach?
Yeah, I mean, that is an attraction, because, going from an accounting background, you don't do sales, you're not a marketeer, so you don't really know what to do on that score. Also, because I came from a industry background, I'd never worked in a practice. I don't know what practice this looks like, what it's, good, bad, or ugly. I didn't know what to do. So I just took the view, because there was a lot of people who said to me at the time, "Oh, well, you're an accountant. Why are you joining a franchise? Why are you paying them all that money to, you can do it?" And I just said, well, I take the view that if I do it on my own, in 5 years' time, where would I be? And if I go in with a franchise, 5 years' time, where would I be? And I always took the view I'd be further ahead with a franchise than on my own. Because if I was on my own, I'd take everything really cautiously. I'd probably still be a one-man band after 5 years, not moved on. And I just took a long-term view of it. And I just think it's one of those things where I'm a big believer in doing things that a lot of people won't do. So, if you make a big commitment and you pay for something, then your attention will go to that, and you have to make it a success. If you've got an out, you're always going to take the out if it's there. So I didn't want an out, basically.
Yeah, that was a great question from Mark around the brand piece, because I'm going to throw something back, which is I know quite a few people who have bought into the kind of franchise model, should I say, you know, maybe whether it's with accounting or legal or whatever, professional services.
Yeah.
And they've done it for that kind of security aspect, and what you said about the marketing, but some of them have actually felt at some point quite sort of handcuffed then, in terms of how they can and can't kind of do their marketing. I mean, that doesn't sound like that's you. It sounds like it's been a very good relationship and a good decision.
Yeah, I mean, on the whole, you know, I'm really happy with it. I mean, in terms of marketing, I mean, the restrictions, I suppose, I mean, because you know, franchises are territory based, you know, postcode based, so you know,
Yes.
get allocation, which is obviously common in franchising. When I started, there was no one in Leicester or around Leicester, so I could kind of do what I wanted because there's no one around anyway. And also leads I would get from, you know, the nearest to me because I was the only one there. It's a bit more restricted now because there are 2 or 3 franchises in Leicester now, so
Yes.
you have to be a bit more careful that you're not kind of, you know, imposing on their area and that kind of thing. So there are a bit more restrictions now, but on the whole, I haven't found it too restrictive in terms of that. It's just basically, you know, if there's a postcode area and there's a networking event in that area and that's not your territory, you're not supposed to go there. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's easily worked out. But on the whole, I've not really found it a problem. I mean, when I first started TaxAssist, the brand name wasn't really that well known. You know, most people hadn't heard of it. And I'd say for like 5, 6, 7 years in, a lot of people, even the clients, didn't even know it was a franchise. They just thought it was mine. They just thought it was, you know, it is what it
Yeah.
is. But things in the last few years that people have realized more and more it's more a franchise. But in the early days, virtually nobody did. And, you know, clients would mention it 5, 6, 7 years down the line and say, oh, I didn't realize this was a franchise. You know, they just thought it was mine. So, and also perhaps they'd seen some around the country and they assumed they were all mine as well. I said, no, they're not mine.
Yeah.
So
So,
yeah, but yeah.
So where are you now compared to where you thought you'd be? So you said you've been kind of in this for 15 years, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is it what you expected? Are you further ahead or just bob on where you expected to be?
No, I mean, I think I'm kind of further ahead. I mean, I opened Leicester office, like I said, within sort of 6 months of starting up. I opened another office in Syston, which is a town close to Leicester, which we closed last year just because the lease had run out, and also it's not that far away from the Leicester office, so it wasn't worth keeping anymore. And post-COVID, people don't really want to come in so much these days, you know, so you don't need that physical
Yeah.
space anymore. And also I'd taken over Nottingham at that stage, so it just became a bit of a stretch, you know, between 3 offices. So it just made sense to let that one go. I did
that the growth? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I did a local acquisition of a firm in 2021. So kind of cut my teeth on that, so I know what it's like. I did another one, like I said, about 18 months ago. So that's kind of helped in acquiring firms. It's, you know, you learn a hell of a lot. But yeah, I mean, having 2 offices and, you know, 2 franchises, about 12 staff now. So I pretty much, you know, I don't think I would have done that or would have had the confidence to do it if I wasn't with the franchise. You still
So
get a lot
how
of
does it work?
support and
How does
advice.
it
And, yeah.
how does it work then? Because I mean, having a team of 12 is
Mm,
significant. So from an HR perspective, how
mm.
are you managing?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as your team grows, that more of your time gets taken up in terms of looking after the team rather than, you know, doing work or looking after the clients, because the team look after the clients, hopefully. Um, so that is more difficult because you're dealing with people, you know, people's issues and people's problems and people's, you know, personalities, you know, getting people to get along. Um, you know, I'm not the most sort of people person out there. You know, I kind of try, but I, you know, I'm probably a bit sharp with people and a bit not as subtle perhaps with people that I need to be, but it's a learning curve. You learn how to kind of do these things as you go along and learn to deal with people and try and create a harmonious environment so everyone gets along and work together.
And how have you done that? What have you learned? What's the way of achieving that? Because I mean, I think this is going to be a problem that everybody faces, really. So how, given you've just said you confessed that you're a bit sharp and you're not a people person, how have you, what approach have you taken? How have you helped yourself?
I think the thing to realize is that there's this thing about you treat everybody equally. I don't think you can treat everybody equally in the sense that you treat everyone the same. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses, and I think you've got to lean into the strengths and try and minimize the weaknesses. So if you're trying to force square pegs into round holes, it doesn't work, and it just it just makes your life harder in the long run. So what I've discovered is that people are really good at a certain thing, let them do that, push them into that, rather than trying to force them into doing something they're not going to be comfortable with, because overall it's not going to work. I always say, look, as a team, 2 + 2 should equal 5. The synergy a team should create should be greater than the sum of their parts. And you can only do that if you kind of lean into the strengths and weaknesses. Certain staff are really good with people. So if they're really good with people, let them talk to the clients, let them do all the people stuff. Someone's really good technically and just can bang out accounts, just let them do the technical stuff, and just kind of that way they're happy, they're comfortable, and you're not trying to make people into something they're not, perhaps. So I've just learned to kind of look, that's their strength, play to that strength. They're not so good at that, so let's not do that or minimize that, and just kind of that hopefully then creates a kind of harmonious team. And
that's really important. I think that's a good piece of insight for others.
And then going back to the practice specifically, you're spending time managing staff and leading your offices. How much client work do you think, compared to other accountants running their own firms?
I mean, I just review stuff. So I do review kind of a few year-end accounts and a few VATs and stuff. I don't do any actual work myself anymore. And the reviews, again, I could get somebody else to do them, but just to kind of help out, or certain ones I've just kind of always done, I just kind of carry on doing them. So I don't need to do them, but I feel I want to kind of keep my hand in and see what's happening and what's going on. So I do try and concentrate on running the business rather than being in it anymore. The only accounts I do are my own, and I find them a bit of a struggle to do, to be honest.
I gave up. I have a bookkeeper who does my stuff.
Yeah, I kind of still do it to kind of keep in with it, and also it gives if I'm using software or whatever, it gives me a chance to use it myself. So I think if I use it myself, I know what the issues and problems are, and perhaps then I can roll that out to clients. So it's a good testing ground for me.
That is really important. And one other TaxAssist specific question, and then we should probably avoid it anymore. But I think listeners may be interested. I seem to recall that the model focuses on clients of a particular size. If a client grows beyond that size, are you required to move them on, or are you allowed to continue acting for them? Are there issues there that have affected you at all, or it's a theoretical problem rather than a real one?
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of, I mean, it's not set in stone, but they recommend, between sort of £2 to £3 million turnover. Anything above that you should avoid. I mean, most of our clients are kind of way under that, so it doesn't really matter. We have had issues where in the past where a firm was very small when we took them on, but then they grew kind of massively. And then it gets to a point where you want them to leave. You want to say, look, you need to find someone else, because they're just getting more and more complicated. I think the issue there is that if you start with someone who's right small and grows really quick, when you start with them, you've got a kind of relationship with the owner.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think as it grows, they get more and more layers in, and you lose that relationship with the owner. You're dealing with the staff now. And their issues become more complicated. You're hearing them about them secondhand. You're not hearing them direct from the owner anymore. And then it becomes difficult. So it's only once in 15 years we've had a company which has grown so big, and we say, look, really, you need to find someone else, and then, you know, move them out the door. But yeah, it's only happened really on one occasion.
That makes sense. And I realise I lied. I have one other specific question, which just relates to the territories bit, because I came across you on LinkedIn, and we engaged there, and I think you volunteered, or I may have invited you there, I can't remember. But of course, LinkedIn doesn't pay much attention to fixed locations. So do you ever have issues where you get approached by somebody outside, quote, your territory, unquote, and you have to say, no, I can't deal with this, it's somebody else?
No, I mean, the thing is, if they come to you, that's different. So obviously, like you said, the online space, you can't control a territory on an online space. So if you market yourself online and then they approach you direct and become a client, then that's fine. You're not encroaching on someone's territory or advertising in their territory, like an advert, you know, magazine or something. So yeah, it's not really an issue.
Okay, so I mean, as a business owner, then, I mean, you've learned a bit about people skills, and also about keeping your hand in with sort of technology to make sure that pathway is always smooth for your clients. What else have you learned? Any other tips?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, when I first started, because I'd come from an industry background, I didn't know much about running a practice. So I just thought, oh, well, you just have to be really clever with tax and save people loads of money, and that's how you get clients and that kind of thing. So, and then when I first started, then I realized that, well, if I'm offering that advice, you know, 20 other accountants are going to offer the same advice. You know, they haven't got a magic wand, or well, some claim they have, but most haven't. But I didn't see that. Yeah, but
the benefit of listeners, I've just waved my magic wand. Sorry, Tej, go on.
Yeah. So then I quickly realised that it's not about the tax or whatever, because you know, if I save someone tax 1 year, they're going to forget about it the next year. They're not going to remember that. So I can say anything. So I quickly realised that what it's about the service, because most clients hate accounts, they hate tax, they hate the whole process around it, and they only do it because it's statutory. You know, they have to pay their tax bill and whatever. You know, as far as they're concerned, their KPI is, you know, have I got money in the bank? I'm doing well. If I ain't got money in the bank, I ain't doing well. So I quickly realised that what they value is the service level. So, you know, they want someone to kind of make it smooth and make it easy and take it off their hands, and to deal with, you know, someone who's going to help them out. So I kind of shifted towards the customer service kind of, you know, aspect of it, rather than the tax aspect of it, and to make their lives really easier, you know, to use technology to make it paperless or seamless. And that's what I kind of concentrated on. And also with TaxAssist, we have shop front offices, so kind of leaned into that. So, well, you can come and see us, we're in the shop, you don't need an appointment. And then concentrate on that aspect, because I thought that's going to, you know, hopefully get clients, and clients who will stay with you long term, rather than, you know, trying to concentrate on the technical aspects of accounting, because people don't care about that. So really, that's what I kind of learned.
Yeah, that's really astute, and listeners generally on the podcast, I suspect most who've been in practice a while will have reached those conclusions as well. It's so different to what everybody assumes when they first start up, and it's also one of the reasons why people, whether they've been in accountants, whether they've been in practice before or not, often struggle to get clients, because they're focusing on, I'm a good accountant. Yeah, well, that's taken as read. That's not going to get
Yeah. So I mean, go on. Were you going to say something, Tej?
Oh no, sorry. No.
All right. So I mean, we've talked about learnings, and of course, the next part is kind of mistakes, and I think we all have numerous mistakes over the years. What kind of have you made, and how have you sort of gone about rectifying it? Just any interesting thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that the classic one is, when you start out, you underprice and you don't want to charge a lot. And you're doing stuff for free, just because you're trying to desperately to get anybody through the door. When you start with a shop front and you start with staff, then you've got overheads going out the door, and you think, well, I've got to cover these. And anybody who walks through the door, you just want to make them a client because you need the money. And then after a while you think, okay, well, I've got to kind of reprice these clients now. I've got to kind of get them up to where they should be. And TaxAssist actually do a course on fee raising because they're aware that it's a problem and people need to kind of do it. And I think I went on this course like 3 times, because I just didn't do it. I just kept chickening out, I suppose.
I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and because I remember then I thought I finally got to do it, and I created a file where they'd kind of gone through the clients and everything. I remember talking to one of my team and said, "Oh, can you look something up in that file?" And she was looking it up, and she just said, "I can't find it." And I said, "No, it's there." And the file was dated like 2 years ago, and she goes, "Oh, I thought it was an old file." I said, "No, that's the file because I started it 2 years ago. I still haven't done it." So, eventually I kind of did it, and I was told, oh, well, for most clients you can just send out an email and say it's going to go from this to this and explain why. And for your kind of top clients, you need to kind of have a chat with them, call them in or whatever. In the end, I just chickened out. I just emailed them all. I thought I'll just wait and see what happens. Even in the kind of bigger ones where the increases were more, I just thought I'll just do it. And to be honest, I hardly heard from anybody. I think 2 clients left, but beyond that, nobody said anything. And then I realised, I've lost out for the hundreds of thousands of pounds. Really, if I'd done this when I should have done, I would have been way ahead now. So that was the kind of, I suppose, the biggest mistake. And then I just kind of realised at that point that I was kind of earning a living, but I wasn't really running a business. It almost felt like I could probably stop this and go and get a job and earn more money, and it just wasn't paying enough. And then I just realised, I said to the team, look, one, we've got to stop doing stuff for free. We've got to charge for stuff that we kind of assume is of low value, or we do it for free anyway. And the other thing that I kind of say to my team now is that, if anything changes, if anything happens, MTD is a perfect example. The first thing to think about is not to think about, how are we going to do it, what software we're going to use, which person's going to do the work. The first thing that should cross your mind is, how do we make money out of this? How do we make money out of this? And then work backwards from there. And if you do that, your team start to come up with suggestions themselves. So when they're doing some stuff, they say, oh, I think we should charge for this, or I think we should charge extra for that. They'll start to come up with ideas themselves. And they're starting to think commercially. They're not just thinking of, I've got to get that done by the deadline. They're starting to think of it as a business. So that's one thing I would instill. I'd say advice is, get your team to think commercially. Think this is a business. It's not just kind of doing stuff for a deadline and tick box, I've done it now, next quarter now. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things, is to think like a business.
How's that turned out then in terms of profitability? I mean, not wishing to get numbers from you, but has that had a dramatic effect?
Yeah, I mean, margin wise, first few years, obviously you're trying to build a turnover and you're kind of concentrating on building the turnover, and perhaps, less concentration on margin. And obviously you're investing in a team and software. So, those things are going to take a hit because they're investments for the future. But then obviously you get to a certain point where obviously you've got to perhaps not concentrate on turnover so much, but, concentrate on the margin and what you're doing. And I'd say that's the stage we're at now. We're not looking to grow turnover massively, but to maintain a margin or increase the margin. And the margin has increased. My turnover has fallen over the last 2 years, but the margin's increased. So, and the thing about having a strong margin is you want to concentrate and work for those people who value you, value your service and value what you're doing for them. And if you do that, that has a knock-on effect. The team feel appreciated, so it's easy to attract team members. So you have got to get to that stage where then you're not chasing sales, or you're not chasing the turnover, but you're cutting the margin, and hopefully then you're attracting the people that will value you, and it's a good match for you. Whereas in the early days, you attract anybody and anybody because you just need the money and you want the money. So yeah, that's the thing now.
Nice.
I think those are all really incisive and important and valuable observations and tips and insights there. And final question from me, just going back on something you said, when you did the third time round eventually get round to putting your fees up, approximately what sort of percentage were they going up, or was it so varied?
Yeah, it varied, but on average is about 15%.
Yeah, that's superb.
I mean, bearing in mind, like I said, there hadn't been increase for a while, so it was, some were more, some were less, but yeah, an average is 15.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing around that time was, just to mention a piece of software, a receipt bank was coming in at that time, and I'd kind of signed up for that. And
as it is now.
Dex as it is now. And at that time they had a all you can eat deal sort of thing, fixed price per month. And then I use that as a sweetener. I said, look, we're going to give you this software as a sweetener. So I think that kind of helped as well. Well, the offer of it helped. I mean, most people didn't take it up, but it was there for them to take up if they wanted to have it. So I think that kind of helped, that I was giving something. It wasn't just a case of me taking it and offering nothing in return. It was a case of me saying, okay, we're going to do this, but I'm going to offer you this instead as well. So this will help you to do your bookkeeping and your stuff. So I think that kind of helped.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. It showed that you weren't just trying to push up fees. That's really important.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's important is, like I said, what I've learned is that you've got to do things what other people aren't prepared to do. So for instance, if I post a lot on LinkedIn, I do it because most accountants won't. Because if they did, what's the point in me doing it as well? So I'm a firm believer, if most people aren't going to do it, then I'm probably going to do it. I mean, the same with with Citibank or Dex as it was back then. I remember having discussions with other accountants, and they said, "Oh, it's far too much money. It's because it's a few £100s a month. I just can't make it pay." And I said, "Well, to be honest, I'm probably going to do it because most accountants won't do it. I'll do it because that'll differentiate me. And in the long term, if I play the long game, I'll get the benefit out of it." So I think that's important as well. You've got to do things that what other people aren't doing, because if they're all doing it, what's the point?
Yeah, very good advice that is. And it sounds to me, whilst you said that you didn't know what it was going to be like being a business owner, I think you really stepped into that. Everything you've talked about, how you're managing staff, what you realized, how you've looked at margin and stuff. I mean, it all sounds obvious stuff, but not everybody does it. And the way that you're talking about it now suggests that after 15 years, you're really quite comfortable with it and doing a great job by the sounds of it.
Yeah,
Hello, Mark. Welcome back.
Yeah, I mean, because this is the only practice experience I had, I had nothing to compare it to. So the only comparison I had was when I did my first acquisition in 2021. And then when I saw how they ran it, and then I said to my team, I said, actually, we're pretty slick in comparison. I didn't realize, because I'd never seen another practice and I don't know how they work. So that was my first insight into seeing another practice. And again, I did the acquisition about 18 months ago, the other TaxAssist. Again, you would think it'd be similar, but it's not. It's still different because they're run by different people. So you still see a lot of, problems and issues, and you think, well, I can apply why I have in my office, I can apply it to other firms as well. So yeah, but that's the first insight you have into another practice. Unless you've worked in other practices, you've got nothing to compare it to. So that was an eye-opener for me when I first did it. I suppose you see people on LinkedIn and everything, and when I used to think, oh, well, mine doesn't run like that, or he seems to be doing really well, and all that kind of thing. But then you don't really know the ins and outs of it, obviously. And it's only when you take over another firm, perhaps, then you see how, what the issues and problems are. And then you think, well, actually, mine ain't so bad. I'm kind of okay. But obviously, it's hard to do that.
I have to tell you, Tej, a number of my mentoring clients weren't running firms, weren't in practice before they came to me. And in almost every case, I'm able to confirm that they're running, in your words, a slicker firm, more efficient than many who were in practice beforehand. And I think that's because if you come to practice with more business experience, you run things differently than if you're just following in the steps of people who've been in practice for a long time. And I'm seeing that more often than not. So what you've said doesn't surprise me. Particularly, you also had the benefit of the franchise behind you too. Sadly, time has come to coming to an end. How can listeners find out more about you or get in touch with you if they want to, Tej? Is that LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn. So Tej Gewara. That's the best place to get in touch. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. And in our bonus interview for Patreon subscribers only, we'll ask you to talk about the biggest challenges you're currently facing in the practice and how you're addressing them and how you're integrating AI into your practice. But before that, Philippa, how can listeners find out more about you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. And we've been talking about brands and marketing and all of that good stuff. If you're not part of a franchise, I would suggest, and you feel like you don't know what makes you unique or what your practice is all about, then come and have a chat with me and we can start to look at that. Mark, what about you?
Well, online everywhere. I'm Bookmark Lee. Even the business card is a bookmark. If you're at the Festival of Accounting and Bookkeeping next week, I'll have some bookmarks with me. If you want one, just come and ask. Otherwise, we can have a chat. If you're running a practice and you feel lonely, isolated or whatever, you want some clarity, better clients or calmer days, I'm always happy to have a chat. No pressure. And do look me up either through my website, bookmarklee.co.uk, or LinkedIn, and do please connect with both Philippa and me on LinkedIn and Tej too, and follow the podcast on LinkedIn, Facebook and Patreon.
And of course, we will be flying the podcast flag at FAB next week, where Mark will be attending. And so if you suddenly realise that you are dead keen on coming on as a guest, please talk to him there. But sadly, that's all we have time for today on the main podcast. I think we've had a really good 30-minute session. Our thanks, of course, to Tej, but also to our sponsors of the podcast, Pinnacle Global Group, your trusted outsourcing partner. Do check out their website and let their CEO, Mayank, know how you heard about the podcast. And hopefully you will see him at FAB as well.
Now, if you read what I wrote, you wouldn't have said to tell him how they heard about the podcast. It's how you heard about Pinnacle Global on the Accountant's Success Secrets podcast. Same thing. Our thanks to the Tax Advice Network, the easiest way for accountants to reach specialist tax advisors. Remember, there's no charge for using the website, findataxadvisor.online, where you can also access their weekly tax tips written especially for general practitioner accountants.
Yeah, I always go off script, but I'm back. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share and leave a review on Apple or Spotify or even YouTube. It makes a real difference.
Absolutely. Thank you, Philippa. Thanks again to Tej. You've been a brilliant guest. Next week, our 95th podcast will be another reflections episode when Philippa and I will share inspiration drawn from our most recent interviewees. On this occasion, as well as reflecting on today's interview with Tej, we'll also be reflecting on what we heard from Dave Selleck, Paul Reed and Jonathan Vowles. And because I'll be at FAB next week, we're actually going to be recording it ahead of time, and technology permitting, we'll broadcast it at the normal allotted time.
Yeah, our guest next week, of course, will be Joanne Bell after that.
No, next week doing reflections.
Yeah, but then you've got Joanne Bell afterwards. So anyway, I'm adding that in. But before we go then, we're going to get further insights from our guest, Tej, for our Patreon subscribers. So please head over to that page. It's patreon.com/accountants success secret singular. That's where you'll hear about the biggest challenges currently facing him and his approach to those challenges. We're also going to talk about AI in their practices too, in his practice too.
Otherwise, until next week on the podcast or anywhere else we might meet online or in real life, bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.